Hello, viewers. It's Mazzy here. Welcome back. This is part 2 of the Record Store Day Jazz Preview. I did volume 1 at the end of this video. There's a link if you haven't seen part 1 of this. And these were records that actually came in right as I uploaded part 1, but it's kind of good to split it up a little bit. That was a couple weeks ago. So link at the end of this video to part 1 if you haven't seen it. Most of these curated by the archivist and jazz detective Zev Feldman. Seek out, there's a great recent interview with Zev with the Jazz Bums. I spoke with him last year around this time about some of his releases. And what's so amazing is that people reach out to him, he discovers tapes, and he has to go through all this, it's a juggling act, getting the license and the estate sign-offs on these recordings, making sure they're mastered properly in various states of tape decay or the way the tapes are stored and the quality they're in, the audio sound of it. Also having to curate photographs and license photographs from photographers and possibly photo agencies is another thing, and believe me, I know what that's about as well. And as well as getting these various musicians and jazz writers and critics and producers to write liner notes and segments to make these wonderful books that accompany most of these recordings. So I'm going to do them just in 2 stages and 2 piles, if you will, by label, starting out with Reel to Reel. This, to me, might be my favorite jazz release of this whole series of all the jazz. I was surprised. Obviously, I know Shelly Manne. Now, jazz from the Pacific Northwest is not totally true. It's half true. The first LP is recorded at the Monterey Jazz Festival. I would say that is in the Bay Area or the South Bay. Monterey. I've been to the Jazz Festival several times over the years. Recorded in 1958. And then the second disc is recorded at the Penthouse in Seattle, Washington. And Zev has curated some amazing shows at the Penthouse. Most of them, as I recall, have been taken from live broadcasts in Seattle at the time from the Penthouse. Long Gone Jazz Club. And these two were the executive producers on both of these records that I'm going to show from Reel to Reel is Corey Weeds. I believe he's from Reel to Reel. Look at that shot. Now, I tell you, this is a friggin' smoking record. Of course, since it's a drummer-bass band, Shelly Manne, you got the drums right up there in front, but they don't take over the entire recording. Obviously, a copy of the, it looks like they're quarter-inch tapes, which they would record off the radio broadcast. Pretty standard for the time. This is a groovy record, too. So 1958. It's got a lot of fire to it. It's got some wonderful standards. You have, obviously, Gershwin's Summertime. One of those great pieces of music that's been recorded by so many jazz artists. And it's just a wonderful, as well as Big Brother and Holding Company. This is my favorite, I think, maybe of all the jazz records until I play another jazz record. The sound is great. I don't usually talk about inner sleeves a lot, but I think the one thing Reel to Reel puts in paper sleeves, and I know jazz buffs, classical buffs, audiophiles, which sometimes they go a little overboard, or, just don't like this paper sleeve thing. Spend the extra quarter and do that. And I'll tell you why, because of the next record. I don't know if that's why, but this is a fantastic record, very successful, and of course, it smokes. It really smokes. Next, we get into a little soul jazz, and again, from the Pacific Northwest, live in Seattle. Brother Jack McDuff, Ain't No Sunshine. Of course, that is that wonderful, just wonderful song by Bill Withers, and he does a great smoking version. I'm using smoking a lot because this stuff is smoking. He's obviously the jazz B3 organ player. This is a little more in the soul jazz vein on it. This is recorded at the Gallery before my time. I don't know that venue in Seattle, obviously long gone. And like the rest, these have kind of a nice insert of the recording and a little overview of the recording. Shows of the venue and review of the venue. Of course, the obligatory tape box. I really like this a lot. I had one issue with this, and I need to tell you that. I don't know if it's because of the paper sleeves, but I didn't have an issue on the Shelly Man, which also had paper sleeve. Side 1 and side 2 on this, and a little bit of side 3, there was a lot of static on it. And it's unfortunate when you get a copy with static. I don't get a lot of bad copies. I use an MC cart, and it's very forgiving, so I don't get a lot of static. I don't usually ultrasound my new records beforehand. I know that's a thing in the whole vinyl audiophile community. You have to clean those records, especially today. You know, we never did back in the day, but that's another story for another day, another video, and there's been plenty of videos on that topic. But I ended up, after listening to side 1, put these in the ultrasonic humming guru, and that static was still there. And it was pretty loud static. So I hope it's just an aberration on this copy. It must be, because I assume these were pressed at the same place. This one was in paper. This one was crystal clear, well pressed. It sounded amazing. And this had static. And of course, once they kick it in gear and are playing, you know, loud and jamming, it falls off. You don't really hear it. But it was enough at the beginning of both records that it made me stop in my boots, even though I wasn't wearing any boots, and made me kind of go clean it and take care of it again. But it's still great music, and this is reel to reel, and this is Brother Jack McDuff, Ain't No Sunshine, live in Seattle. This is from 1972, so it's got a little more of that funky vibe to it. Musically, it's pretty nice too. Next, I want to go into Elemental Records. They've been putting out some amazing things for Record Store Day for the last several years, and they do some incredible soul and blues and rock releases throughout the year. Now, I did make a mistake and was called out yesterday in my Record Store Day preview video. I included 3 records that came in one of the packages I got from Elemental Music. They were the Diana Ross and the Supremes album, The Temptations, and the B.B. King live in Japan. And apparently, I was wrong. Those were not Record Store Day releases. Those are coming out in May. Either way, those were fantastic releases. So seek them out, but not on Record Store Day. So I just wanted to correct that here. Cannonball Adderley. We got Burnin' in Bordeaux. We got Poppin' in Paris. The intro that Zev Feldman writes in here reminds us of 4 or 5 years ago when they released, what was it, Sitting in Seattle, Sleepless in Seattle. So I just thought this was kind of hysterical, like the copywriter, or maybe Zev. Burnin' in Bordeaux, Poppin' in Paris, Sitting in San Francisco, Naked in New York. What are you going to do next, Zev? But I love it. Now, I don't listen or read any other reviews of these. There's other YouTubers, there's other critics who have gotten advanced copies, and I don't watch those until I listen myself and review them, because I think I need to not be prejudiced by other people's opinions. And we all have different tastes and everything, whether it's sound and audio and our setups and our rooms, and of course musically first. But I've been hearing on the grapevine that one of these is great sounding and one of these is not so great, more archival. Archival is the word used to mean maybe substandard. I don't agree with that, because if you go back, I'm a big fan of, those of you who watch me know I'm a Charlie Parker fan, my favorite jazz artist. Those recordings are not what Blue Note, Tone Poet, New Records, that pristine, the prestige stuff sound like. They're recordings of the time, whether it's from the 40s or 1950s, just a different sound, but musically those are killer friggin' records. So I don't need those to be that pristine sound. And of course, if you like the music, I think that happens a lot with people who are new to jazz, unfortunately, that we got spoiled by these wonderful Blue Note sounding records coming out and being reissued over the last few years, or the Music Matters, or any of the archive, the Columbia, the Miles Davis, UHQRs that sound great. these aren't going to sound like that, but these sound very good. So I assumed that the live in France in '69 would be subpar compared to the '72. I didn't find that the case, really. Let me kind of go into this. First of all, they're very different musically, different bands. You got the standard. You got Julian Cannonball Adderley and his brother Nat Adderley cornet. Now, I tell you, on the '69 thing, Nat smokes on the cornet. He's just amazing on here. You got Joe Zawinul. Now, I'm familiar with Joe Zawinul. I've heard his earlier stuff here. A lot of people who know Joe Zawinul know him because he, in the like 1970, I guess 71, started his own band with Weather Report. That's where it's more electric. It's more fusion based, obviously playing with Miles Davis in the electric period as well. I mean, that is something you'd expect to be really like electronic. It's not here. He does on here play piano, electric piano, but the piano playing that he does on here is friggin' gorgeous. The acoustic piano. I did not know. One thing I learned, the biggest hit that Cannonball Adderley ever had on Capitol Records was Mercy, 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 crossover pop jazz hit. I didn't realize that was written by Joe Zawinul. What I love about this record too is Cannonball Adderley, and reading the liner notes on there, how just a teacher he was in jazz, and how he would introduce the songs to his audience and not talk down to them and really connect with his audience. That is the brilliance. This sounds really good. Now, is it that tone poet good? No, but it's really good. This record smokes. Also on here is a version of Somewhere, which is a great song from West Side Story, and he introduces that, and it just goes through this wonderful set of originals written by Cannonball Adderley and Joe Zawinul together and separately. And of course, the Mercy, Mercy, Mercy song that they did was that chart busting. This is an incredible album. Now, there is a book on this. You can see there's the tape. You have great essays. You have another introduction by Zev Feldman. You got notes by various musicians and curators. Roy McCurdy, the drummer, reflects on Cannonball Adderley. Now, Cannonball Adderley made my favorite jazz album of all time, and that is Something Else with Miles Davis, and I just love that record. And on the second record, the 1972 record, a totally different vibe. I think that's what's great. There's a yin-yang about these two records. This does sound better, if that's what you want to hear, but not by much. There's a deeper, fuller sound on this, but that is not to take away anything from the 1969 recording. What's more interesting is how different 3 years make from 1969 to 1972. Of course, the influence is all over on that, like from that electronic Miles Davis, from In a Silent Way to Bitches Brew. Of course, you don't have Zawinul, which is what you would expect to be on an album. By then, he was doing his Weather Report thing and doing the things with Miles. But here you have George Duke on piano. Of course, my experience of George Duke is with Zappa and Jean-Luc Ponty and doing a lot of that funky fusion stuff, which this record really kind of showcases. This record is more of an electronic 70s record, somewhat, a more funky fusion, but it's not overkill fusion. It's not a Return to Forever. It's not a Weather Report. It's got his DNA in this music, but just goes a little more electric. George Duke plays some beautiful piano as well as some electric funky things on it. You got Walter Booker on bass this time, and you still have Roy McCurdy on drums, and of course Nat and Julian on here. But this is more a 1972 record. This doesn't have the introduction, that connection with the audience like this is, but it doesn't take away from it. Side one, you have Black Messiah, which is somewhat of it starts out kind of soft and it builds, and it's got that really kind of, African, little bit of a funkiness to it, but it doesn't take away or escape all the traditional hard bop stuff and sort of crossover work he was doing here. Side B opens up with a 13 Minutes of Autumn Leaves, a song that, again, is one of my favorite songs that opens up something else. He totally reinvents it. The theme is there, everything. He gets more electronic. He gets a little more upbeats. You do have a version of Mercy, Mercy, Mercy on here, which is pretty close and faithful to the one on here and to the original. Maybe it's a little more funked up, but not by a lot, because that's a funky tune. That's a commercial kind of, audience grabber if you ever had one. The opening track on side D, Hummin', is almost 9 minutes, and that's the total funky riff thing. I believe that was written, that's an Adderley tune, okay. That's a funky thing, and directions by Joe Zawinul. Since Joe played with Cannonball all those years, there's like 4 or 5 tracks on here, co-written or written by Joe Zawinul, and so it's really great. But again, these two are yin and yang. I've already been asked by showing some of these record covers on Instagram, which is the better one. I don't want to get both. If for me, the 69 is the most enjoyable. This has a slight edge sonically, but this is more, if you like the fusion side of jazz and the electronic side. Not that it's all that, but it's more of that. This is more of the hard bop and bop that I usually prefer on a record. But I tell you, this is a killer record. This is a killer record. This is a great sandwich. I mean, popping in Paris, burning in Bordeaux. Mazzy the Maniac loves Cannonball Adderley on Elemental Music. There you go. And lastly, we have this fantastic 4 LP Sonny Rollins box. Freedom Weaver, the 1959 European recordings. This is on Resonance Records, again, curated, ready for consumption by Zev Feldman. 4 LPs. Now, I think I've been asked about this more than anything else. What is this like? How good is this? This is a combination of radio broadcasts, radio recordings that sound excellent. Those were recorded on Swedish radio in Stockholm in 1959. They're also recorded in Zurich in 1959. And then it is augmented by several LPs recorded live at these various venues, including venues in Germany and in France. This is a smoking record too. What's great about Sonny Rollins, it notches up. His sound when he's live is kind of different than some of his subdued stuff on record. Now, I love his studio stuff, but when he's on live on his recordings that I've heard, his melodies, his solos are very melodic, more melodic than a lot of other sax players. This is an excellent collection. Now, there is a difference between the sound of the radio broadcasts and the live things. The radio broadcasts are more pristine, pure, direct. You hear the ambiance of the room a little bit. Maybe it's a little not as pure, but I'm going to do a little bit take here. The first track you're going to hear, only a very short snippet, is from the live room, and that is in Stockholm. That is called St. Thomas, a track in Stockholm. Right after that, it's going to followed by another track. I think it's There Will Never Be Another You from Swedish radio in 1959. So you see the difference. The wonderful Zev Feldman curated booklet on this. I mean, I just love this. The photographs, the introduction. Zev writes the introduction on here with these great pictures of the performances from photographers from the day. Look at this. This is a killer shot. There's a wonderful essay by Peter Brotzman called Rollins is My Man in here. Excerpt from an interview that Zev Feldman did in 2022. Sonny Rollins on Resonance Records. everyone wants to know musically how they sound. Everyone wants to know audibly how they sound. I try to kind of, let you know to best of my ability. If something is really off, I would let you know that too. But this is a great record. And again, what I said in my first video, that Art Tatum record, that's kind of a gold standard too in terms of a box as well. I just love those live performances of that. So thanks for watching. See you next time. Mazzy loves you.